This is an exciting one. So, I am Sarthak, and this is True Calling. And our guests today are Alison and Michael Vaclav, co-founders of Medici. So, a little bit about them. They met at Metro Espresso Bar on Guadalupe Street in Austin. Then they got married in 2002, and in 2006, they started Medici with their first cafe in West Lynn. The Metro Espresso Bar that they met at later turned into their second location. Currently, they have six locations in Austin, including one at the Austin airport, which is so cool, and have been running Medici for the last 18 years. 18 years, guys. The Daily Meal published a list of America's 50 best coffee shops and named Medici among one of them. In this conversation, we discussed the origin story of Medici, how it started, the evolution of the culture, how to build a culture, how to differentiate yourself as a cafe where a coffee can be a commodity. On optimism, we talked about the mindset you need to have through this journey, parenting, and growing a business at the same time, how they've kind of balanced that. A lot of philosophical conversations around their tagline, make haste slowly. And we talk about competition, how they view competition, and how they view luck, and much more. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Well, thank you so much, honestly, for joining. I mean, I wasn't expecting to like come across you randomly at Medici,
It
and
was so wild.
yeah, and you were doing something that you do like on a quarterly basis, right?
Yeah. Yeah, once a quarter I lead a art journaling workshop. And so it's about reflection over the previous season. And so we were doing, what was that? We were doing our summer reflection, and I was in the middle of it. And we had all our stuff set out, and I remember you staring at the table like, what is going on? So, yeah, and that's how we met. It was great.
So I've been in Austin for just under 3 years now, and
Okay.
wherever I have moved within Austin, I have come across a Medici. It's just like the locations seem to just be perfectly aligned. Wherever I was in East Austin, I went to the Springdale location first, and then I moved to South Lamar. I went to South Lamar, and then I'm now moved on campus here at UT Austin, and there's Guad, right? So I want to start off with the origin of Medici, but I want to ask it in like a different way. Like, what's the fundamental question you were trying to answer when you both started Medici?
It's a great question.
That's a really good question.
I mean, for us, like we've always been in coffee shops in general. Like Alice and I, we were part of a friend group, and we used to go to Metro Espresso Bar, which is our Guadalupe store now. And I used to I was that guy who bought a drink and sat there for 12 hours. And so I would just meet all these different people from all walks of life, Christian, Muslim, Satanist, circus people. It's like, I mean, it was like across the board, like, Ayn Rand people. It's like all these different types of people. And so I would just sit there and ask people questions. And that's kind of how I learn, is like through people and just the interaction. And I have more questions than I have answers. So it's like, I'll bug somebody until they stop it. They're like, hey, okay, leave me alone. So that was kind of like, coffee shops have kind of meant that for us. And, her and Alison and I were hanging out a lot in Metro, and that's kind of where we started dating, which was really kind of fun. So,
Wow.
and then fast forward 10 years or so, that's our Guadalupe store now. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I think we started Medici just more out of the love of people. And then when I started in coffee in 2003, I worked for JP's Java. And that's kind of where I fell in love with coffee. I always liked coffee, but coffee is more of like a thing you have in front of you, an excuse to play chess and smoke cigarettes and do that kind of stuff. But then, JP's is kind of where a lot of the specialty coffee movement started here in the South and in Austin specifically.
What is JP? I haven't heard of that.
It's no longer there. They closed in 2015. But one of the barista that won the first U.S. Barista Championship came and trained the people at JP's Java. So kind of like that beginning of the specialty coffee movement happened there. And that's where I got my training too. And so I fell in love with coffee. And so you bring the people part, and then the coffee part, and the community part, and that's kind of where we kind of brought it together.
Well, also, we had thought, oh, well, Michael was going to try and go to grad school and get a master's in philosophy or his PhD in philosophy,
Be a
because
doctor.
that's like...
That's the podcast, right?
Yeah, totally, exactly.
He has a history and philosophy degree, and he loves to explore big, hard ideas. And so, anyway, none of that panned out, and I was working at UT at the time, and our life kind of centered around coffee shops. And so we kind of felt like, well, could we do this? Like, could we make a space? And I don't know. Maybe let's do it. It just felt like, can we make the place where people come and have the conversations? And
was there like something you guys were seeing in other cafes that kind of inspired you to actually go more into building your own cafe, or you saw something was missing?
Well, yeah, good coffee. I mean, Austin was known for coffee shops. Like, there's so many of the first generation, Bolden Creek and Little City and
Metro, Mojo.
There's very much a coffee shop culture in Austin already, but the coffee was terrible. It was bad everywhere, like it was in most places in the country, right? It was just your first wave, mass-produced coffee, and so that was what was unique about JP's, and what we got to expand on the refinement of that was like, oh, coffee shop, but really good coffee.
Yeah, I think that's something that kind of grew over the years too. Like, when we opened, there's the specialty coffee movement was really small, and then by 2010, so you had Once Over come in and do a really good job, and then a manager of mine opened up Houndstooth, and then after that, it just sort of like from 2010 to 2015, like the coffee movement just like specialty coffee really grew in Austin. Like we're now, it's like I can tell you like 20 or 30 places to go have a great cup of coffee. I mean, there's so many people doing an excellent job at coffee, which is really cool. So
I heard somewhere that you got your first taste or understanding of coffee from this Ethiopian.
Oh yeah.
What was that about?
So in 2004, Patrick Pierce, who now owns Fleet, and John Johnson, who passed away, us three went to the first barista jam in College Station, and that's what we called them back in the day. And so we had latte art contest, and us three were the only ones that could actually pour latte art. This is like way early on, before that latte art was even a thing. And it was at that space, someone brought an Ethiopian Harrar that was so blueberry that it just blew your mind. And it was just like, and most people that in coffee, it was an Ethiopian coffee that was their sort of like aha moment. Now there's so many coffees that have that same exact kind of like profile that can like just kind of shock you. So yeah, Ethiopians are usually most older coffee people was their sort of gateway into.
Wait, why is that?
It's a natural process. So in the natural process, a lot more of the fruit flavors come out of it. So it's like, you're used to like, just tasting like charcoal and like, back in the day and stuff like that. It was more of your dark roasted coffee. And with the Ethiopians, that fruit kind of jumps out a little bit more. Now we're kind of tend, and especially kind of moving more into the medium to light space. So you're opening up a lot more of those flavors in general. But Ethiopia in the early days was one of the few places you could find that sort of like, really interesting. And there's all sorts of like controversy. Like some people don't think naturals are good, and some people think only washed are good. And yeah.
So when you guys first started, in Clarksville, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you opened all these other locations. And when I asked, so I went around this past week, and I just went to South Lamar location. I went to the Guad location, and I just asked maybe 20, 30 people, what's when you were to describe someone who's never been to Medici, what are the words you would use to describe, 1 to 3 words you would use to describe Medici to someone else? And the common answers I got was, one was convenient, and the other was collaborative, and another one was friendly.
I got you.
Wow.
And I think the convenient part really strikes to me, because I've just noticed it wherever I was, it just was around me where I could just walk over. So how did you guys decide that the first location would be Clarksville?
It was divine intervention. I'm not joking. We had been looking for spaces all over town. We'd kind of hop in the car and just drive around and be like, "Ooh, it'd be cool to have a shop there," and "Ooh, what about that?" And so we did that, and then one day we started calling realtors, and almost every location we had thought like, "Ooh, that would be awesome," had already been leased by a tea shop or a coffee shop or somebody else. Anyway, so we were really discouraged, but there was this one other place we checked. I think it was over on Rio Grande.
Yeah.
And we called the realtor. We're like, "This, is this available?" He said, "No, this one's not available, but you should go right now over to West Lynn because there's a little place I know the landowner really wants something local, something special. You should go look at it." And so we went and looked at it, and we were like, "Okay, whatever we have to do, this is it," which was important because it then took us about 2 years.
Yeah, totally.
We leased the space in 2004.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we did not open the store until 2006. So it was a labor of love,
Mm-hmm.
but so worth it. I mean, that store is a treasure.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a gem.
Yeah, it's funny. The landlord was sort of like, he was like, So at that time we had one kid, and here's this young couple who wants to open a coffee shop. It's like,
How young were you guys at that time, actually?
I was 24. And you were
27.
27.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have trusted us? We have no business degrees, like
No money.
a tiny little baby business plan, no money, but he turned down Starbucks to take a risk on us.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think so?
I think because of his character. I think
Yeah.
because, I have a pretty deep faith, and I just feel like there was divine intervention that allowed this to all come together.
Yeah, he's a really good man. I mean, his grandfather was Anthony of Anthony's Cleaners, and so all those properties were kind of like his family kind of bought over time, and so he has like a real tie to that community too. And he just sold it this last year because his kids didn't want to take over and manage all of this stuff. So he's kind of like unloading some of it. New owners are really cool too.
Right, and he's Italian, and there was that neighborhood used to be a neighborhood of Italian immigrants, and so his family has been connected to that neighborhood for a long time.
Yeah.
It seems like you're also connected to Italy in some ways.
Michael loves Medici,
Yeah.
and the period of Enlightenment is like your favorite historical period, and
Yeah, like how did the whole make Haste slowly kind of come up?
Well, it's actually the Medici's mantra, which is, there's a lot of things that are loosely tied, but that's somewhat loosely tied to the Medici. So festina lente is make haste slowly. But really, it's like the Medici were, known as patrons of the arts, and anything in the Renaissance was tied to the Medici family, whether it's Raphael, Michelangelo studied in their sculptor gardens, Da Vinci, and, Botticelli. There's just so much that kind of like connects the Medici to a lot of the things that happened, but also like the Medici did a lot of really great things and a lot of really bad things. And so I like the idea of like money, influence, and power are not good or bad. It's what you do with them. And the Medici family is a really great example of all the extremes. It's like, there's so many different things. If you look at the history of the families and how they interacted with the money and influence and power, they all interacted with it very differently. Cosimo was kind of like rule behind the scenes. Like don't stick your head up. Like kind of like you help the city, and then in helping the city, you also help yourself too. And then Pierre and what was this, Giovanni and Pierre? No, Lorenzo and Pierre. They came out next, and Lorenzo was kind of known for spending a lot of the Medici fortune. It was a little bit luxurious and kind of was like a little bit more out front in the way that he led, and kind of caused the Medici a lot of problem. And there was a couple of popes that were Medicis that didn't do so great, and but then there was like a duke that was actually protected Galileo. Galileo was his was his tutor for a long time, and he protected him from the church at the time because of Galileo's views, and until at some point there was so much pressure on him that he couldn't anymore, and that's whenever Galileo got sentenced and stuff.
History lesson.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No.
But it's really fascinating. I mean, there's so many interesting things too. It's like Plato and Aristotle were also lost in the West. Like the Ottoman Empire had preserved a lot of that stuff, but during the Middle Ages, a lot of that stuff was not in the Western world, and so a lot of that stuff was coming back over into the Western world. And the Medici were also in charge of, took it on themselves to translate, bring back into Latin and Greek, and to preserve and to kind of like accumulate some of that knowledge that was kind of lost to the West. So, I mean, there were so many fascinating things that happened during that sort of Renaissance Reformation and then into the Enlightenment, you know? So.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, festina lente is kind of a phrase associated with the Medici family. Okay. Yeah. It's also a paradox, which you also love.
Yeah, I love paradoxes.
Tell me more. So how? What does it mean? What does make haste slowly mean to you guys?
It's the tension it's the tension of in between. So it's like you know, go, 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 go. It's like, well, if you do that, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to burn a lot of bridges. But if you also go slowly, it's like you're not really like taking advantage of what you have. You know, it's like you're just kind of what's it call it? It's like the tension between, like when you're making a drink, it's like how do you make a drink fast for your customer, but then also how do you make it good? So there's that tension between fast and good. You know, it's like you can go really slow, you know, but the customer might be like, oh, come on, I need my drink because I have something to do. I need to go somewhere, you know? But if you also just spitting out drinks, it's like the customer's walking away with something that's subpar. So there's a tension there that's, you know, of the paradox of how do you do something fast, yet also with intention, you know? So.
That's very interesting. I wanted to ask you guys, like, I remember in a podcast that you had at in Shores of Ignorance with you, you talked about, like, there are certain things we do that might not be productive, but they're very valuable in terms of the habits we cultivate. And they don't seem from the outside like these are adding to, like, business metrics and stuff like that. But I wanted to ask you guys, like, what's a habit that you guys have developed that seems unproductive but is extremely valuable to you personally?
Go, Michael. Yours are most interesting.
I'm a very structured person. Like I need to have. So it's like it's almost hard for me to say because I don't feel like I have any habits that don't have purpose. You know, but maybe outside looking in, they could seem like it doesn't have purpose. You know, but you know, for me, I wake up around 4 or 5 in the morning. I go have my coffee. I do some reading. I set up my day, and then I go work out. You know, I do all the cliche things like sauna, cold plunge.
Oh, really?
You know, and all that kind of stuff. You know, so it's like a lot of it's just like kind of getting perspective, like, you know, meditation. You know, it's like you could say like it doesn't have a purpose, but yet it does. You know, it's like spending time with your family. It's like I feel like everything you do has purpose, and it's just you might not. If it doesn't, then I think that would be questionable. It's like why are you doing it then? And it doesn't mean it has to have, you know, it's not saving the world or, you know, world hunger or it's, you know, saving energy or whatever it might be. It's like it can have like little tiny pieces of purpose. Like one thing with our family, like we really love sitting down at the dinner table and eating. You know, like it's just creating the opportunity for conversation. You know, it's like maybe some days like everyone's in a bad mood and just like rah, 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 you know? You know, it's like but most of the time it's like you create a space for that opportunity to happen. So I don't know if is there anything that you can think of that you do that doesn't serve a purpose? Or you said that, like serve a purpose?
Yeah, like it might not seem like it's productive, and
productive.
My art journaling definitely could fall into that category, right? Like just sitting with magazines and colors and putting things on pages. But that practice has really preserved my mental health, especially over some really hard years recently. So it looks silly. Looks like a grown.
It looks fun.
It's so fun. But it feels like a much deeper, much more powerful tool than what it seems, right? I mean, it's like you're recovering Your inner child's ability to play, your being able to process emotions, you're being able to sort through relationships, find new perspectives on problems. It's a rather than starting with words, right? Because words are very complex and like frontal lobe activity, but images and art and color are, right brain, your reptile brain. That's the language, and so it's very integrating practice for me. But it looks like mom's playing with art supply.
I thought about this because I know that you guys are very artistically inclined in a lot of ways too, and you do this art journaling thing. And I was wondering to myself, if at any point when you guys started Medici, did you guys ever just not think about it as a business and more of it just like as this artistic place, or was it like always a thought process of this has to be built into a business?
I think it's always been both. Michael, both because I think we bring the two sides of that coin, right? Like I feel like you are way more, like we both share the love of community, we both share the love of people. But I feel like you're the entrepreneur. You're skilled at seeing the big picture and strategy and being able to analyze and do the like mental bits. I love spaces and I'm really attuned to beauty and comfort, and I love getting to help make the spaces feel good. Yeah. Which is always challenging when you don't have money. So I think it's always a bit of that. It's coming from both of us.
It's something you talked about. This is like most of the years we didn't know how long we would make it.
Totally.
Medici has indeed been on the brink of closure more times than we care to admit. But at this point, it seems like we have built something that will last.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about like what is like a challenge? Like what comes to mind as like the biggest challenge you guys faced during this time? It's been 18 years, which is wild.
Years have been a lot of challenges.
There's so much, and this is one thing I love talking with other business owners, especially young business owners, is about like opening up a coffee shop or opening up a business. And so I kind of want to start here where when someone talks to me like opening up a business, my first response to them is don't do it. And part of it is like, if you can't convince me why you should do it, then you should not do this, because it's like you're going to be pushed and pulled and torn apart through this whole process. And all of that is good because you learn so much because it's so hard, and you're going to be tried as far as like, your patience, your risk taking, your relationships, it's like, I'm very thankful. Like, also I've been doing this for 18 years. And I know a lot of my friends that are business owners, it's like divorces and, don't have good relationships with their family. And I think that's some advice that we got early on from a friend of ours was that, it's like your businesses come and go, but your wife and your kids, your relationships, those are kind of forever. It's like those are things you're going to have longer than any business you have. So it's like it's really important to learn to preserve those. And it's not that it's not hard through the whole thing. I mean, we've had a really tough time, like Medici growing and stuff like that. There's many Augusts where we come along, we're eating beans and rice, and it's like, and then the coffee season starts again, September, October, like, all right, here we go. But I think the biggest challenge for us was, there's a lot of little to big challenges in between, but our floor at our Guadalupe store cracked, and
the building broke in half.
Building broke in half, yes,
the
basically.
Floor literally broken.
So it was supposed to be like a 2-week fix, and the landlord was going to take care of it. It took 4 months.
Wow.
And so we had no income coming in. I kept on a lot of our staff because we thought it was going to be 2 weeks, and it was going to be 2 weeks, 4 months, And so I ended up I just kept my manager on. So you have all these expenses that are happening, even though you're closed, even though they're paying for the remodel. And we got to a point where Alison and I it was either we had to fold everything, like the West Lynn and the Guadalupe store, or we took on this high interest debt again, because we didn't have access to, banks that were, no one's going to give you money without collateral, And so we went after these high interest, so we had to decide if we were going to do that or not. And so either fold it or go after these higher interest loans. So we decided that we were going to go for it. And so we took on this high interest loans. Like we had to replace.
You had a dream. You had a dream.
I did have a dream. So that did help. But
What was the dream?
so I was in our Guadalupe store, and it was an earthquake, and this place was shaking, and I was trying to get things out of the way so that people didn't get hurt, and I was telling people to go to the doorways and stuff like that. And then Bill, who worked for CVS, who was our landlord, or we sublist from CVS, he was moving the refrigerator out of the way so that it wouldn't hurt anybody. And then I was following everybody out the door, and I turned around before I went out onto Guadalupe Street, and I shook my fist in the air. I was like, "Thank you, God." It was so weird.
Wait, this was after or before
This is
crack?
before the crack. Yeah.
Whoa.
So it was like, it was and so whenever this started happening, because the crack happened over like an 8-month period. Okay, it went like from like the floor was like an inch, from like over a 10-foot area was down an inch, and then by 8 months it was almost a 1.5 foot difference between different space. So I had told my landlord, I have to close if you're not going to come and fix this, and that's when they came to fix it. So that kind of also.
But wasn't there something about a disco ball?
Oh yeah, my hand turned into a
hand turned
disco.
into a disco
That's
ball.
right, my hand turned into a disco ball. Yeah.
But there was something in the dream that felt like this is worth fighting
Preserving,
for.
yeah.
So yeah, there have been these challenges like buildings break, refrigerators break,
ACs.
ice storms shut everything down, all kinds of stuff. But I think those are hard and stressful, but not as painful as the people challenges. I think, I think it's like as much as you love people, it's like those are also like can be the hardest, most enduring like pain of business and relationships.
Yeah.
Because we're messy. We're so messy. And you don't escape that, even though you draw people together. There's been some painful breaks, and it's also part of it.
How do you reconcile that?
The relationships, well, some you can't. Some it's just finding forgiveness for yourself and for other people, and acceptance and time.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. We've had so many different people come through our doors, and in different places in their life too. It's like pretty much like 18 to 25 is like this realm of which we've almost always had from 2006 to 2024.
Interesting.
And so there's this part too, is like you're also this space where people are moving into their adulthood, and so it's like, how do you provide a space for people that allows them to grow and also go through their own growing pains, and because you can't solve everybody's problems, and sometimes there's things that are on you as a business owner, or as a leader, or as a sort of mentor. There's things that are on you and that you need to take responsibility for, and then there's things that are on the individuals that are working for you. And sometimes that's hard to determine, like which is which. Like what is my role in this, and what is your role in this? And I think that's always, you're kind of doing this dance between that, because you have some people that will take responsibility for everything for their staff, and that's not actually good or healthy. It's like they need to be able to experience that responsibility and the consequences, and also the celebration of that responsibility. And so I think that's the hard thing. And then you have other people that are completely distant from their staff, which they don't give them any guidance, and it's all on them. And there can be that sort of like, you're just leaving me alone out here, So it's I think, again, the paradox, make haste slowly. Like there's a space in between where you provide your staff with responsibility and accountability and the rewards thereof, and then also you provide them with the mentoring and the guidance. So usually my management styles, when I think of management styles, I kind of think of order and chaos. Like chaos is complete craziness. Like there's no structures. Everybody's just flying by the seat of their pants. Who's in charge? I don't know. Do we do this or we do that? Well, just do whatever you want. You know?
Yeah.
And then you have the order side where it's like so structured that you say, hello, welcome to Medici. Thank you very much. Here's your cappuccino. And it's like you make it to this temperature. If it's a temperature above or below, it's not good. It's like, it's so micromanaged that doesn't allow the personality or even innovation, because it's like you have to follow the rules. And so like I'm kind of more of like center right, which is like into the chaos area. So I like kind of allow people freedom to kind of like make up and see what is possible. So like I feel like if I provide too much structure, there's all the possibilities start to kind of leave the room, you know. And then so I've kind of actually had to learn how to bring more order into Medici, so that people that really thrive with more order and more structure can also thrive at Medici. But I think historically speaking, people that are kind of like the freedom and like that responsibility usually thrive better at Medici, you know, because they have room to maneuver and room to kind of create. And I think that's also what's made Medici what Medici is today. Because I think of like all the people, Clancy, who owns Wild Gift, like he won the first South Central Barista Champion and competed in the U.S. Barista Championship. Patrick Pierce, who did the exact same thing, who worked for me. You know, Sean from Houndstooth. It's like a lot of what they did at Medici, their fingerprint and DNA is left on Medici. So like Alison and I kind of created the container and provide some structure, but what Medici is today is by all these different people that have come in, you know, Stephanie and Tucker. And I mean, it's like they just kind of left their imprint. And then the next group comes in. Because I've also noticed over the 18 years is you kind of have this moment where it's like people kind of are starting to come together and coalesce into something. And then it kind of goes away. And then it comes back. And I think that pattern, I think it was at the very beginning when I didn't really see that pattern. It was really hard whenever people left, because then it left me having to pick up the pieces and build the next thing.
Right.
And over time, we've kind of built systems in place that kind of help with that, because it is a pattern, especially in the service industry and in coffee shop. There's realities that you have to really like accept, which is, you know, service industry is a transitory place. And so like, you know, you have people from 6 months to 2 years. So how do you provide a container that best helps and provides people growth with that sort of time frame? And then you have some people that will be there from 2 to 5 years, you know, but that's really that 6 months to 2 years is kind of like majority of the people. So you kind of have to build systems around that kind of thing. How can we get people trained up really quickly at a high level of customer service and drink quality? And then, you know, it's like managers, how can we bring them in and provide the container and that they can step into it, but then they also can bring their own personality to the shop too. So I think over the years, like after seeing that sort of like ebb and flow over quite a few times, but it's also really beautiful when all that coalesces. Like right now at Medici, we're kind of in another, because during COVID is like everyone was like all over the place, you know, and we probably turned our staff twice during that time. And a lot of it was like just like good things, because I think everyone can see that like during COVID, everyone was asking like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, do I like this? Am I going to do that? And so there a lot of like self-reflection. Like Thomas, who's been with me for like 14 years, he was turning 40, and I was like, yeah, Michael, it's like, I'm 40. So if I'm going to do something else, I probably need to do it now. I was like, you're so right, dude. Like that's right. You know, it's like, and so it was just really sad to also see people that I've walked with Medici for so long go, but also to celebrate it, because it's like, he's like, no, I think I want to try something different. And I'm like, that's awesome. You know, and this is all like upper management. A couple moved to Tennessee to kind of do different things. And so it wasn't like, it wasn't bad breakups. It was just like, there's just seasons of life.
Yeah.
And so it's hard as a business owner, is like, how do you mitigate those seasons of life that's natural, you know, and yet still continue the ideas of what Medici is into the future for the customer, for the community, you know, because even though you're as a business experiencing those seasonalities, it's still, you want to provide something consistent for your community and customers and stuff like that. That was a long answer to something.
No, this is amazing. So the first thing which came to my mind was like, you know, you have these ebbs and flows, but there's like guiding principles, like at large, the culture can be the guiding principle. Like, have you seen the culture of Medici changed since you guys started, or has that been pretty consistent?
That's a good question. I have a snap answer, but I don't know if I want to snap answer that.
What's your snap gut answer?
Yes, it stayed the same.
That was my response too.
Yeah.
I think that there's, well, I mean, part of our job in getting to create this business is imparting the values, right? Like we're not going to create something that is not a reflection of what we value. And so I think imparting those values and having like the pillars of, of excellence, because those are things that we value: excellence, customer service, like welcoming environment. Like those are kind of the things that this is what, no matter what location, no matter what part of the city we're in, Medici needs to feel like this, which is, it's like a family, like each of our children, they're very different. They're unique individual people, and all of our locations are unique, but they're all getting the same, love.
Yeah.
So it feels like that. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, each community has been able to grow uniquely, but there's a steady stream of whatever it is we bring.
Yeah, I like that. So the value part, and then also the kind of like what was really important for Alice and I. We were kind of talking this before in the podcast. Is something that was really important to us was providing and creating a neutral space for people to come. And so that's why Medici, I've always kind of stayed away from like religious, political, or social issues, because like we want Medici to be this place that you come and discuss that. Like I want a Democrat and a Republican to feel comfortable coming to Medici and have the discussion, an atheist and a Christian, or, whatever your viewpoints are. I don't want Medici I want it to be that space where that conversation happens. And I think that's something that's been really hard for us to preserve, because like your staff are passionate and they're like, get behind my cause and like support this. And I'm like, no, that's great. I support you in doing that. But Medici's where that conversation happens. And I think that's been something that we've always I think we've navigated successfully, but it's always been somewhat of a pinpoint for, some of our passionate staff that it's like, no, it's great that you're passionate about that. It's like,
and that's a generational shift too, right? Like, that a business stands for something is new. I mean, it used to not, like when we were kids and our parents and the businesses that they worked in, your business was your business. It was not your political stance. It was not your vehicle for doing something else. It was your business. But I think that's been a generational shift that we're like living into and trying to navigate, because I think that our perspective of wanting to have Medici to be neutral is not normal and not celebrated exactly in the current atmosphere.
So, I was talking to a friend who went to Burning Man this year. And it's amazing how like Burning Man, like that container in that desert in California, I think, is just like suddenly leads to like this switch in humans there, right? Like we are kind of away from certain topics. We don't talk about certain things, and they're just like this open sort of chaos in some ways where you can just talk and be in whatever way. Yeah. And I feel like it's so fascinating that we're able to like change behavior of people so quickly if we set the right conditions for them to kind of do those things. Yeah. And I think of Medici or the neutrality of it as like a microcosm for Austin as a city. Because I feel like Austin's a lot of that too. It's sort of everyone all together in one place, but also like a platform where people come and go. People, like there's these waves of Austin as well. Yeah. So I do wonder like how can one create a container like that? So how can you differentiate yourself in creating that container? Because for a lot of people, especially right now, I'm in these classes where we're talking about how much of a commodity coffee is, right? So beyond coffee, creating those containers, like what does it take to create a container like that?
A willingness to not go along with the the rules. The example that's coming to mind is back when all of a sudden everyone was posting no carry signs. Like Michael's pet peeve is signs. Like the government forcing us to put signs in our buildings. And like I get it. It's for me. I don't like it because it's ugly. Like I don't want your ugly governmental sign in my space. But everyone. I think we caught a lot of slack because we didn't post the trend. There's some word I'm looking for. I can't land on. I don't want to say it wasn't just like a popularity.
It was a zeitgeist kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just like you put up your, no open carry sign, and we didn't, and some people didn't like that. But then everyone gets over it, and so I think you have to be willing to not do what the social pressure of the moment is, and you have a greater tolerance for that than most people, I think. Because of how you are. Yeah.
You want to say something?
No, go ahead.
No, this kind of reminds me of competition in some ways, because I think so much so right now I'm in this deep dive of John D. Rockefeller for whatever reason. But
it's a really book. Yeah, I read his biography.
You read his biography? Okay. So I'm reading right now the 38 letters John D. Rockefeller wrote to his son across the time. And, Rockefeller had two goals very early on in his life. It was to be the wealthiest man in America, like when he was like 17, 18. Check. So that one everyone knows about. The other one is that he wanted to live up to 100. And this is in 1800, which is like kind of equivalent to like living to 140 probably, like at this time. Right. And he lived to a 97.
So close.
I know, so close. So he wrote these letters.
Call that a check.
It's like rounding error.
Exactly.
And so he kind of like talked about one of the letters he wrote to his son. He starts off the letter by, "Today is a very sad day, son. Mr. Benson passed away. Mr. Benson was my biggest competitor." And then he goes into this whole thing of like how much he was fueled by the competitive nature of the people in oil and gas, especially Mr. Benson, because he really pushed him to like do things that he didn't think he could do. So I was curious to hear from your guys' perspective on this topic. Like, how do you view competition in an environment like this?
That's interesting. I don't really view people like competition-wise. It's kind of more relational to me than competition. And I've got one instance in particular. I'm not going to give details on, just out of respect. But I did have like a situation where someone close to me did something that was like in business that was kind of a jerk move, and but it wasn't the competition part of it. It was more of like that we were so close and that you did that, and then the whole like it's business, not personal. And I kind of do get that statement, maybe in some contexts, but then I feel like sometimes it's used as an excuse. And it's interesting because like you were asking a question earlier and that Alison answered. I kind of like there's another element too, as far as like, I forgot how you stated it, but the idea of like there's something different for different people. Like for us, like the competition thing, or why we. Can you remind me what that question was you asked her?
About maintaining a neutral space?
About yeah. Oh no, I lost it. But
like how she was like how the carry thing is that?
Oh yeah, like we didn't come along. Well, I'll just go with the competition thing. So I've never really had that feel of competition. I've seen. I think it's more like inspiring. Like Greater Goods kind of came on the scene and like they were doing some really great things. Trey and Con are amazing. So it's like they kind of inspire everyone else to get better. It's like the same thing when Sean opened up Houndstooth. It's like it then inspires you to raise your game. So I think when you get that sort of like environment where people are kind of innovating, it's like Medici innovated and then other people broke off of Medici and were innovating, which then caused us to kind of step our game up more too. It's like, so I think some people could view it as the competitive spirit that's happening, but I think that's a negative. And if you get caught up in the competitive spirit, then I think there's some it's not very healthy.
You kind of lose your sauce. You kind of go too much into thinking about how we can now, it's like a chess game. How do I now give the next move based on the other person rather than what you were doing by yourself in the first place?
Yeah, and instead of allowing it to like fuel creativity within your thing, so you're not trying to be them. It's fueling your creativity and your own brand.
Well, and I think there has to be, I don't feel like Michael and I are very competitive people. It's not, I don't feel like we draw a sense of motivation from that at all. Because I think we deeply believe there's enough for everyone. Like there's actually enough, the coffee market is big enough. Like everyone has a place here. Like whoever wants to come into this space, there's room for you because people love a good product and good coffee. And so, yeah, when you see other people, and I think the Austin coffee scene in general, at least in the beginning and in recent years, it has felt more collaborative because of that. It doesn't feel like, ooh, you've got to guard all your trade secrets because, somebody from Summer Moon's going to come in and which I think businesses can be very much like that. So you're you keep your respectful distance from each other. I don't think the coffee scene has been like that. I feel like it's been way more like relationship building and that feels healthy. That feels like yes, and we can all thrive here. But do we need to open coffee shops like next door to each other? Probably not. Let's not divide this 4 blocks.
Yeah.
Coffee shop.
Coffee headquarters.
But I love that about the coffee scene.
I think there's many reasons to go to a cafe, which is what kind of brings the level of, like, you can have the same person go to like 3 different cafes in the same day and enjoy it for different reasons.
Totally, yeah.
And I think that those levels of like intentions and reasoning aren't really there for all kinds of like businesses or the product that businesses provide, I think.
Yeah.
Like I'm in the fintech space and there's certain reasons why people come to like use something like a fintech product. It's to move money, it's whatever. But there's very limited reasons and a cafe just seems like there's an open world out there like that you can use it for so many different ways.
Yeah.
What do you say? Do you think that's sort of accurate?
Oh yeah. I mean, just the what has been created in Medici, like the business meetings that have happened there, the dissertations that have happened there, the plays that have been written there, the dates that have happened there, the breakups that have happened.
Oh man, yeah. I heard one story today of a breakup actually at Medici. I know.
That's awesome.
I know.
Weddings. You're just a mom out of her mind, needs to get out of the house and grab a coffee. Like it's a beautiful third space, which was interesting because I listened to a portion of your interview with the woman who started the boardwalks.
Yeah.
She was saying there's no third space. I'm like, yes, there is. It's in coffee shops. That's why we're doing what we do. Because it's a neutral space where you can meet so many different like relational needs. And my daughter asked me to take her to the mall. She's like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to be around people. And she's 15. I'm like, fair. But when she said that, I realized, oh, that's what coffee shops are for me. Like when I need to feel myself a human in this world. I don't necessarily need to interact, but just to feel that I belong. And it's such a beautiful space for that.
Wow. I want to ask you about luck. Yeah.
Oh.
You guys were talking earlier about the challenges, but how has luck played a role? How do you guys view luck, first of all?
Well, the luck is always kind of like, it's always been a hard word for me. But I've always liked the idea of like luck favors the prepared. And I forgot who said that now. I think it's probably Winston Churchill. He always says those things.
There's like a Churchillism or something. There's like a word for it used. Like when you don't know what the quotes are, they're normally almost attributed to Winston Churchill.
Exactly. But I've always liked that and I think that's part of what. So the luck part is sort of, you really don't know whether you kind of like think of like an Ecclesiastes kind of view of things, like, rain comes on the righteous as well as the unrighteous. It's like there's this sort of like, how does where well, I'm so unlucky, or I'm not like, or I'm so lucky. But I feel like the common denominator underneath that is like just kind of preparing your field so that if it does rain, then something's going to grow. So like I don't really like to even think about luck in general. I like to think more of like preparing a field that if the situation happens, that something will come from that. It's like whether it's like improving yourself, like reading, writing, journaling, art journaling, working on yourself, or working on your relationships, on your business. And I felt that for so much. Like you're like with Medici, it's like I'm always trying to figure out how to do things better, and you're always slicing and dicing and doing all these things, and then all of a sudden something comes along and goes, and you're like, well, that was lucky. It's like, or is it because you've prepared something that then something came in, and because you had it prepared, it flourished, because I don't think, again, I don't think it's something that we don't have as much control as we think we do. And then on the other side is we have more control than we think we do. And I think, again, paradox. Yeah, I know. It's the tension between, and I think that gets into like you start seeing, for me, there's fundamental aspects to reality. Like there's two things that I've never been able to break. So I like to break things. And there's two ideas I've never been able to break. One's the paradox. I know who I am, yet I don't know who I am. There's a tension of those two spaces. And the part of it is like, I know my wife, Alison, but I also don't know her. So there's this part of I'm always getting to know her. It's like, so when you talk about the universe or God or whatever that is, that external entity, it's like there's this part that you can know, this outside reality outside of yourself, but you're not going to know it as I don't know my wife. And so that kind of leads to the second axiom, which is there is an objective truth, but I have a subjective experience of it. And so there's this idea of like where I don't know what this is out there. I have to explore, but there is something to explore, and there's something to discover. There's principles out there. It's like, if you're in business and you provide good customer service and you treat people with respect, you get a response from people. It's like if you do that and don't get a response from people, it's like there's something wrong there. But I feel like time and time again, over time, if you treat people with respect and are nice to them, just ask them how they're doing. It's like there's a response that comes from that. So I think those are the kind of things that I look at out in the world, and that gives me the confidence that there is an objective reality, but I have a subjective experience of it. And so those are the two things I've never been able to break, but that kind of underline a lot of like what we do and how we move forward and with whether it's business or our relationship or with our kids, because like it's with your kids, it's like there's this part where you want to provide them all these things, in kind of an ordered space, but at the same time, you have to allow them into the chaos of the unknown and allow them to have that sort of like, to experience failure, and ideally is like, as they're younger, you allow them experience failure in little chunks, and as they get older, those chunks have to get bigger and stuff like that. And I think those are just really healthy. I'm going on a long.
No, your second axiom reminded me of I don't know who said this again. Maybe Churchill. No, I don't know.
Winston Churchill.
No, it was some Asian philosopher who said we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. That's your thing around objective reality. There's something out there. I do agree with that too. I want to know your thoughts on the luck side of it.
Question of luck. Thank you. It's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that. So it's good to like anchor into what are my beliefs around that. I think I don't believe in luck. I think that there are principles, like Michael was talking to, like, we reap what we sow, which is, the law of effects and consequences, right? Like actions and reactions. But I also believe there is a higher power. I do believe that there is a higher power, creator, greater than all of us. And I find myself more sane in the world when I can trust that there's a divine order to the world. And so, something I may consider lucky may not actually be lucky, right? Something that I may consider a massive misfortune, in the end may not be. It's like I may have, the ways that I learned and grew and became strong because of some challenge that felt extremely fucking unlucky.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah.
like all 3 ACs, stores at 3 ACs breaking in August and the same month.
Mm-hmm.
This feels extreme. You can interpret that as just, oh, that's really unlucky. But what did Michael gain, and what did the staff gain by having to like learn patience and get innovative in the meantime? And so it's like, I don't know that we even are able to rightly define our experience because we're so in time. And
What does that mean? So in time.
I can't see, like right now, what feels really hard and painful. I can't see right now the ways that I'll benefit from that in the future. Or this thing that feels like the best thing in the world, the biggest gift. I can't see how, over time that actually may come to harm me or cause me to become apathetic. So I think there's just, I feel like a humility and being able to accept experience and accept life as, okay, whatever this is, however it feels in the moment, whether it's good or bad, if I can accept it and move through it, learn and grow from whatever experience it is, whether it's good or bad, then like win-win. Yeah.
Do you guys view experiences good or bad? It seems like you're very much into like the paradox of everything. It's sort of neutral.
Yeah. Well, it's not neutral. It's because like there's something about like what the paradox is. It's like, you know, have you ever heard the flow state and that kind of stuff? I mean, there's something about when you're in that optimal space. It's like in between order and chaos, and it's like, but you don't really understand the optimal. You know, again, when I say optimal, that's really difficult because it can be kind of like it can be like a space of optimability. You know?
Yeah, go ahead.
Whatever. Optimalness.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so I don't want to get too narrow on what that is, but it's like you do go in between this sort of order and chaos. Things become too order, and then things die, and it's like there's no life in it, you know. And then you go into the chaos, and it's like there is nothing to tether to, and you're just crazy and stuff like that. And then so it's like, but you kind of keep coming back in this space, and it's like there's a fullness of life in that in between space. And so I think that's kind of why I see the paradox. You know, it's like even like luck and that kind of stuff is like, I don't even know what that is. It's like it seems like it's more about in life you have these experiences and they may be good or bad. You know, it's like, I mean, if someone shoots your child, like you say, like that was a bad instance or that was a bad action, you know, but what comes out of that? Something beautiful might come out of that, and this doesn't say that was a good thing. It was a bad thing, but something beautiful came out of it. And so it's just really hard to. And you said something about luck too. It's like sometimes like when things happen that are really good to us, and it's like, but then we sometimes like take it on as if we did them too, and it's like, and I think that's also not helpful either. It's sort of, we get to experience these things.
Well, it makes me think of greater goods. I had this experience the other day. You know, I was walking through, I don't know what it was, Sam's or Costco, and I kind of walked past the coffee aisle, which I generally ignore, and I'm like, oh, there's greater goods in Sam. Was it Sam?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I had this twinge of like, man, like, why isn't that Medici? You know, like we've been around longer, and we haven't been roasting longer. Whatever. It was a twinge of jealousy that I felt like, why isn't that us? You know, like why don't we have that particular kind of success? And I sat with that for a moment and let that be there. But then it came back to this idea. It's like, no, that is not our path right now, and that's not the challenge that we need. That's not the blessing that we need. Like, we're on our path, and if we're meant to take over Costco one day, like that'll happen. You know, we got into HEB, which, I mean, my 24-year-old self would have blown my mind. We had no thoughts of that when we started Medici 18 years ago. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a roast facility, and then we're gonna be an HEB, and
Or we'd have a coffee shop at the airport. Like,
We have a coffee shop.
That's so cool. That is just so cool.
yeah.
Like what? And
Yeah.
so it like brought me, it just helped me again, humility and then back to gratitude of like, whoa, look at what we have. I never even expected to have what we have. So getting distracted, I think, with what other people's success is just kind of undermining in a way, self-sabotage.
Yeah, I agree.
I heard this maybe yesterday somewhere on comparison, and it was something like if you compete externally, you compare, but if you compete internally, you improve.
Yeah.
And you know the overall vibe I get from both of you guys right now is like a level of optimism, like beyond the highs and lows. It's like things will be good, no matter what sort of situation.
Yeah.
Would you consider, like, do you think people can train optimism? This is something I ask because I see a lot of the conversations in college are just like depressing. There's no other way to put it. It's just about people like talking about how someone did something bad to them, or something bad happened, or how they were criticizing some other brand, some person. It's like so much of our time is spent on criticism and putting other things or people down.
Right.
So I really find that optimism is like a crutch or an operating manual that can really help us go beyond and look for like the better in people, and better in things, in situations that we have faced.
Right.
How do you guys do you think optimism is, first of all, like trainable?
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I do think it is an inherent quality in people. I think you are naturally a more optimistic person. But I want to back up too, though, about having a focus of attention that's on the negative, on the difficulties, on the interpreting your experiences so that you are oriented as the victim. It reminds me of a question that I'm in Al-Anon and I have a sponsor, and I was kind of kvetching about life, and she just listened so patiently, and then she looked at me and she was like, I wonder how you benefit by keeping your focus of attention on other people or on this situation. She's like, how do you benefit from that? And I just took me aback, and I swallowed, and I'm like, oh, it's a really convenient way to not have to deal with what's going on in here. If I can point out everyone else's problems and everything else that's wrong in the world, I get to avoid what's wrong here. But this is the only thing I can actually change. I can't change any of that. So I reinforce my own powerlessness by continuing to stay focused on other people's behaviors and situations I can't change. It's easier than having to go in here and be like, what's here? What do I have to work with? Believing in yourself, cultivating. So I think, yes, I think we can. I think we can change. I think our brains as humans are oriented toward, the negativity bias, looking for danger and survival. But I don't think that's I don't think we have to stay that way. I think that we can, because I'm less naturally optimistic. I tend to be a little more scared, way more risk averse than him. And I feel more emotionally, and so suffering, I think, affects me more, other people's and my own. But I feel like I'm really learning in this stage of my life to not allow myself to get stuck in focusing on all the negative things that I can't change, just because I'm too scared to look at, oh, I actually feel powerless. I actually feel like I don't have confidence and I don't matter. Those are harder, but so worth it.
Yeah.
So optimism, I think I've become more optimistic.
So you've trained yourself to be more optimistic by consistently reevaluating sort of what you feel about things, and then changing the story you associate with those things.
Yeah, my focus hasn't been like necessarily that I want to become more optimistic. It's my motivation is more around I need to feel sane. And I think living in a externally focused way, which I did, I think most of my life, leads to insanity and disempowerment. And so I've, within a community and within, my friends and art, it's like I'm trying to like reclaim my strength as a person, and transform and grow. It's growth.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys this is a question I had. What's been harder, raising kids or growing a business?
Yes.
I love that answer.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's just so many parallels in all of that. I would say what's more valuable is definitely raising kids. Like that's something that you're kind of putting something into the future that is way more valuable than any business you could ever make. It's like, here's these people that are dependent on you for their life and sustenance, But not only that, as they grow up, they're looking to you to like, what is this world about? And so there's what you teach them verbally, and then there's what you just, they see by the way that you lived your life, which is a lot more. And so there's a lot of I feel like that's part two, is like when you have kids, they're kind of a mirror of yourself. And so I think in that sense, it's probably more difficult to raise kids because you can step away from your business or close your business, I guess you could run away from your kids too, but that's shittier than running away from a business. But it's like, it's really, it's like when you yell at your, like, what the hell? Oh my gosh, you're 2 years old. You don't know how to do that. It's like, it's just, I think it's a lot more, it's more reflective of you, and that a lot of stuff like Alison was talking about, like that was a lot of good stuff there. It's like, it causes you to reflect, and kind of on the optimism thing too, is like, I don't think our goal should be more optimistic. And I felt like you were kind of doing this thing. I was trying to like understand like where it was going, and I thought you did it really beautifully. It's like if we have to work on ourselves, and then there's things that come out of it. It's like you can't work to be happy. It's like, because happy is more of a byproduct. Optimism is more of a byproduct. It's like if your view of reality, kind of like you were saying, is not correct, or more correct, which you can never be 100% correct, but it's like the more correct you are, the optimism starts to kind of come out of you. It's like the way you treat people, the way you treat your kids, and run your business. It's like, I feel like that those are more byproducts as far as like as you're working on yourself. Like, it's good you can blame people, you can be competitive with people, and you're always pointing outward. I'm the victim because of all you guys, and it's like, but then when you start thinking about it, it's like, okay, what do I need to do to improve? Hey, okay, I need to learn how to be a better manager. Okay, maybe I need to learn some skills in this space. It's like when you're working on you, it ends up benefiting other people. Sort of like the idea of like, you can't save someone who's bleeding out if you're over there bleeding out too. It's like, oh, I'm helping you, and you're like, dude, you're bleeding all over me. It's like, okay, well, let me patch myself first. Then I'll come over and help you. It's like,
yeah. I mean, starting a business will absolutely challenge you to the core, but raising kids is like all the worst parts of you will be exposed. And you can choose to deal with that or not. And so it's the ultimate like growth opportunity to have kids, because your worst self will be utterly exposed.
Totally.
And it's humbling.
I want to ask you guys a vulnerable question, maybe.
Yeah.
Choose to answer as you might.
Totally, yeah.
I heard this guy, Peter Crone, I don't know if you guys have heard of him. Again, like spirituality, mind-related stuff.
Yeah.
Say like, people and circumstances show you where you're not free.
Oh.
So I wanted to ask you guys, where do you guys currently feel like you're not free?
Yeah, that's great. That's easy for me.
I love it.
I'm in it. Well, I'm working a 12-step program. It's a 12-step recovery program, and a part of it is, step 4, you have to do create a moral inventory. So all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses, and you have to benefit from it, you have to get radically honest with yourself. And so it's been over a course of several months that I've been engaged in this process, and because of my intense desire to be more sane and sober in the world, that brought the honesty, and I'm beginning to see like my patterns and how my intense fear of conflict really paralyzes me, makes me so impotent in a lot of situations and relationships. My perfectionism, which I didn't realize how deeply that affected me, but my fear of making mistakes or of making people upset or uncomfortable, of not getting it right, how that also completely paralyzes me and keeps me very small and quiet and disempowered. So I think for me, working on like finding my own confidence and willingness to assert myself and say what I think and not avoid conflict for the sake of peace, that's something I really, really want to grow in. And then also my fear, it's just straight up fear of making mistakes, fear of not being perfect, fear of looking like I don't know what I'm doing. I really want to overcome those things, because I finally am seeing how much I am the one that's in my way. So where are you not free?
That's funny. This is why it's so good to have like a partner in your life, like, you know, like Alison, because like I don't feel imprisoned by anything. It's like I feel the tension of things, but I feel like Alison, I think, helps me see those things. You know, like that's something I kind of I feel like you kind of help me see things that I don't see, because I don't see limitations. I only see possibilities, and so if I'm not free in an area, it's because I'm not seeing the possibilities, and I don't. So even when you asked that question, I was like, where do I feel? I couldn't really. Like, I would almost ask Alison to answer that question for me, because I'm probably saying things that she would be like, oh yeah, you're like, you feel kind of imprisoned in that. Where I don't see I'm actually in prison. It's just more of like, because I'm more of like, okay, I see what's possible out there, but I might be being held back. I don't. Do you have any insight into that for me, babe?
By the way, this is super insightful, because a lot of the people that start out stuff have the same fears, right? And it's sort of refreshing to see that those fears don't necessarily disappear. Like, you just get better at handling them. I think it's just like very empowering in some ways to hear that, because you guys have been running something for like 18 years. You have many kids, like, and it's hard, and still you can keep on developing your business, do other stuff, have a good community of people around while working through those things. I feel like it's it's like either you are or not, which is not like kind of how life works. And a lot of times it's just like you just get better at it.
Yeah, right. You don't have to be perfect to start something. You don't have to know it all. You don't have to be 100% confident. You don't have to be the best and know the most to do the thing that you love. It's like, if you love it, just do it and just start. Like, there's enough. I believe it's like there's abundance in this world, and if you have something to bring that you love, bring it. There's somebody out there that they put it, Maya Angelou, she has a quote, but anyway, it's like we all have, it's medicine that we bring, like our particular however life alchemizes in us and then comes out as a creative offering in the world, whether that's a coffee shop or tech or jewelry or, you know, coaching a soccer team. It's
or
like,
supporting somebody too,
right. It's like, bring it. Just like go for it. It's so much worth it to have, you know, expressed yourself in the world than to keep trying to like perfect yourself or get everything in order it's the same with having kids. People are like, oh, I can't have kids yet because I don't have enough money, and this and that and that. I'm like, just have your kids. It's fine.
Yeah, totally.
Like, actually, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just if you feel the urge and the call to like have a family, just do it.
Mhm.
Like, the
There's
money
no
will
time.
come. The support will come. The resources will come. Like, it's a profound calling.
Mhm.
Just go for it.
Did having kids just drive you more to make sure that Medici survives through the very hard challenges?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean,
For you?
it's how.
See, this is why I need her. I'm like,
I mean,
like,
it's how we fed our family.
Mhm.
Medici had to make money.
oh yeah. Oh, I guess
Because
yeah. In the interim, yeah.
It's like that's
Mhm.
how we bought the groceries,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, I think that has totally driven you to keep it going. And,
Yeah.
and at this point, where you have the question mark of like, wow, is this something that we would hand off to our kids? Like, our oldest is in college now, and we're on the downhill of our kids starting to leave home,
Mhm.
and it's like. I don't know. At the moment, like, half of them don't drink coffee, so they can't work for us anyway.
That's funny.
Um,
What do they drink?
Well, Emerson drinks coffee in the morning.
Mhm.
She's 15. Elia our oldest really wants to like coffee, but she just doesn't. So they drink, I don't know, not coffee.
Water, sodas.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
tea, I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I wanted to ask you one last question on this. One question is on the current season of your life. Like, where are you guys currently? Like, what's the season of life you guys are in right now?
Well, we're in the second half. We're in the last half of the family years, which was a harsh realization for me. We have 5 kids, basically 2 years apart, and so one's already left. We'll have another one leaving this year. So basically every 2 years we're going to have a kid leaving the house.
Wow.
Which is the end of a season. So in some sense that's really motivating. It's like, oh, it put a timeline on a more realistic timeline of like, okay, we've got our youngest is 11, we've got 6 years. Okay, how do we want to make the most of these 6 years?
Mhm.
And that's helpful to focus our attention. But yeah, I think we're just in it. I think we're just really in it. There's some like U-curve thing where it's like happiness chart. Like, you're real happy, and then in
The smiley chart.
40s you get real uncomfortable, and then it gets better. And so I honestly think I'm like at these last couple of years for sure have been my bottom. This season of life is really lonely. It's because it's very difficult. If you have kids and if you're working, like most people our age are, you are very lonely. It is difficult to find time to deeply connect with your friends and your sources of support because you're so busy supporting the people that in your work environment, you're with your children. I mean, you can absolutely consume 24/7 with your kids' activities if you want to. And so it's lonely. And then, at our season 2, a lot of our friends, your parents start needing care and
Or dying too. Yeah.
or dying.
Wow.
And meanwhile, you've got kids leaving the house. And what my sponsor's husband called this season of life the full catastrophe. It's like you've built some stuff and you're trying to make it stick, and your kids are becoming independent, and that's a really hard thing, and like the full catastrophe. And I'm
I like that.
Look at him. He's like, yeah.
I love the idea of a full
I like
catastrophe.
it. So I think we're in it.
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
think we're in it, and we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, I can say that. And that I can say that now is like huge.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, my parents would empathize. They've been by themselves kind of in India for 3 years at least now. So I asked them this question recently. my dad's parents would live with us. So I grew up with my grandparents in the house on my dad's side. And they were kind of like my parents because my dad and mom were working very similar to you guys throughout their career. And my grandparents sort of got the responsibility of being our parents. I have a younger brother too. And I asked them, like, how often do you think about my grandparents, like my dad's parents? And they were like, every day, because we are alone. When you just look around, you see pictures, that's kind of like what's left of so much of that house. And we've grown up in the house for the last 20 plus years, same house. And so I can feel the emotion when you're saying that. It's just like, it's a real reality of life. It's made me question, like, if I should currently where I'm at, where we're trying to build stuff and grow these things, how much time should I put in spending time with my parents now that they're like in their late 50s, hopefully a few more decades to go. So yeah, it reminds me of the shortness of it all. Anything you would want to say to your kids?
We say lots of things to our kids all the time. They hear a lot from us.
Anything you want to say to the other parents that are in a similar state of mind?
I think one thing I would say is when I remember a friend of mine told me, he's like, Michael, you know what your problem is? You're afraid to fail. And I think that's the part that I would just encourage everyone is to fail, to learn to fail, to love to fail, because that's the only place you learn. Like even like the luck stuff and all that kind of stuff, you don't really learn from luck. It's like you learn from your failures. And I think that's the part. It's like, start a family early. I mean, just do it. It's like it's hard, it's difficult. If you ask a parent who says like, you should start a family, they're like, why? It's like, it sucks. They're like, well, why should I start a family? It's like you can't explain those types of things. Like whenever your daughter like says, I love you for the first time, it's like, or they fall over and they hurt themselves and you help them and they just like, you feel this dependence on you. It's like, or your son starts talking to you about what would be better to live in a hell with a possibility of heaven or with heaven with the possibility of hell.
Wow.
And you're like, dude, like every year somebody's chosen.
He's conscious.
Yeah, I know. And so you're sitting there discussing this with your son. It's like you can't explain this, but also he's had a really difficult journey, and we've walked through that, and especially Alison walked through that with him. And who wants that? It's like, man, our life is so much greater because we've gone through these things and have had kids and opened a business and have all these failures and seen our inabilities. Like, it's like, I think that's just part of it is like life is short, and it's like, you might as well just start doing it. It's like,
Right. I just want to add on to that. Like, I think we are definitely just so pro have a family because not just for the, like, as I've talked about, just the own growth and maturity that is automatic with the process, but also it makes you care about the world in a way that, like, I would not. I think we're just so inherently selfish and built to, not selfish, we're just we are built to meet our own needs, right? But now I don't know that I would care as much as I do, but knowing that like my children are going to inherit the world that we are building right now. And I am invested in that and invested in the world that they get to step into being as functional as it can be. But honestly, I don't think I would care as much if I didn't have kids. Maybe that makes me like a dumb person, but I think it's just true. Like it sounds cliche, but it's just very real.
Yeah. It just like, I don't know if you've seen this graph of like the number of pets that have increased over the years versus the number of kids.
Oh yeah.
And it's like this, like kind of like it's like the number of pets in households in the US have like skyrocketed like this, and number of kids are going the opposite direction.
Really?
Yeah. And it's sort of like people are substituting kids for dogs. That's sort of the thing. And I do wonder the same question then, like, do we care the same as we would for a human in our life that we need to take care of for a much longer time period than a pet that's in our house?
Right.
And how does that impact how we, like, our legacy kind of unfolds and what we want to do for the next generation?
Right.
We don't care that much about doing like something for the next generation of dogs, I'm sure, compared to the number of for the number of kids. Like, there's no way, but it does make me question that.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. I had not heard that.
Yeah, pet market is blowing up right now. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining. I mean, I've had too many experiences to count, honestly, at Medici, just sitting there with, I've had dates, I've had a company that I was part of, we ended up, all of us literally walking out of that company. Like 80% of employees left that company, and we all were scared. I haven't said the story ever, but we all were scared, like, that the guy who was owning that company would genuinely, like, probably hurt some of us because he was kind of very insane. And so we went to a Medici at Springdale right after we all walked out.
Wow.
And we sat there, and it was like a safe space sort of to just like feel together in that moment.
Yeah.
It's just something that I think about sometimes because it comes up. So I just wanted to say a huge, like, gratitude of thanks for creating those spaces where people can feel all kinds of emotions.
Yeah.
Just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
Well, thanks for having us. This is always fun to.
We should have him on our podcast.
There you go.
Can we tell the people now? Can we tell everyone?
Yes, we have. This is the best part. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Michael,
Right there
Michael
on this
and I
camera.
are starting a podcast called Make Haste Slowly, and it'll be released really soon. The heart of it is to get to do this. We've met so many amazing people through Medici, right? Like, this connection happened at Medici. This Austin is full of amazing people with amazing stories, and it's really the heart of why we do what we do. So we are starting this podcast to get to introduce these amazing people to the broader community.
Yeah, it's really fun. We've got JP from JP's Java, kind of like where a lot of the specialty movement kind of started, and where I started working, and have him tell his story, which is really great. And Greg from K-Tonics on, Chantal from Stroop Waffles, Amanda from Tiny Pies. So it's like, it's their story, but also the entrepreneurial side of it, as well as the life part of it. And, you know, kind of like what we're talking about here. I think it's just so great, like having like you have so many people that you're tied to, and stories that need to be told. And also just there's also a cathartic thing too, is like, if nobody listens to this, like, I got something out of being here, you know? And so I think that's really beautiful. Like, even with Make Haste Slowly, it's like just sitting there with your customer. If nobody else listens to it, it's like we get something out of it. Maybe that's selfish, but we get something out of it by just doing it. And so I think that's really beautiful.
So much life connection in real time with real people is so life-giving, so enriching, and we just want to be able to share more, kind of in the same spirit. We feel kindred.
Yeah.
So maybe you can come on and Make Haste Slowly sometime.
There we go.
I feel the love. And guys, these are all going to be amazing conversations. I have so many people in my mind that would love to also be part of this podcast.
Oh, cool.
Some people, builders and founders of this, that I've met at Medici. So thank you so much, guys. And
Thank you.
thank you for listening.
Yeah.